The star field shimmered beyond the glass dome of Observation Deck 6. But Thalen's focus rested on the flickering holoscreen before him. Hundreds of feeds streamed simultaneously: thermal imaging, sonar sweeps, encrypted military chatterall, extracted from a single turbulent world. Earth. He folded his long, pale fingers beneath his chin and leaned in closer, lips pressed into a thoughtful line. On one screen, armored vehicles churned through ruined city blocks. Another displayed a helmet cam from a human soldier, breath ragged and vision blood-streaked. Thalen inhaled slowly. "Fascinating," he murmured. Behind him, the doors hissed open. "You're watching the savages again." Thalen turned slightly, unsurprised by the voice. Vorik. The taller Elorian stepped forward, arms clasped behind his back in military precision. His violet eyes swept across the data streams with a sneer that didn't quite touch his lips. "Still hoping they'll evolve before they annihilate themselves." "I'm observing," Thalen replied, gesturing to the screen. "Not hoping. Observation yields insight. Insight informs prediction. Prediction won't save them," Vorik said. "You can't predict chaos. You can only quarantine it." Thalen refrained from replying. He tapped a command, expanding. One feed. A soldier crouched behind rubble, aiming a rifle with surgical precision. The target, another human, clad differently. Younger jerked back as rounds tore through flesh. The body collapsed into the mud. "Such efficiency," Vorik commented dryly. "And yet you call them fascinating." "It's precisely that contradiction. They're not mindless," Thalen said. "They calculate, empathize, and yet they kill without hesitation. There's duality here, conflict within the individual, not just the species." Vorik's jaw twitched. Duality is weakness. Their evolution favors contradiction over cohesion. It's a design flaw. Before Thalen could answer, another voice cut through the air, smoother and quieter. "You both argue as if they were." "Simulations," Sether said, gliding into the room. His robe shimmered in the low blue light, archival sigils glowing along its hem. He carried no tools, but always seemed to know more than any database could store. "But we're not watching numbers. We're watching a threshold." Thalen arched an eyebrow. "Threshold." Sether tilted his head toward the largest projection, a strategic overlay of Earth's major powers. Red lines crawled across the continents, supply chains, military logistics. Alliances fraying. Tensions nearing detonation. They're nearing a point of no return, Sether said. They've developed weapons that their instincts can't ethically wield. But they will use them, because restraint isn't in their nature, only victory. Vorik nodded. At last, the historian speaks sense. "I don't take sides," Sether replied. "I document. And I'm documenting a species that might become either the galaxy's greatest threat or its most improbable savior." Thalen stood, his tall frame unfolding like a question stretching toward an answer. "Then we must understand them more deeply. Select individuals. Track their decisions. Watch the fracture points, not just the surface eruptions." Vorik scoffed. "You want to pick favorites." "No," Thalen said. "I want to observe the minds within the war. The men who choose, who pull triggers or don't. Those are the ones who define the future." He brought up a new file, encrypted logs from covert communication satellites. With a flick of his hand, he filtered them through a neural heuristic engine and isolated several key combatants. One stood out: Captain Reece Morrow. Multiple citations. Battlefield promotions. Commanded a special operations unit embedded deep, behind contested lines. Psychological profile flagged for high stress tolerance, moral flexibility, and survivor syndrome. Dozens of missions, most redacted. One incident involving civilian casualties, buried under layers of bureaucracy. "Here," Thalen said. This one, he's the kind they send when diplomacy fails. Or when they never intended to try, Sether added. Another figure emerged. Next to Morrow's profile, Sergeant Leo Vargas, subordinate and field partner. Fewer accolades, but high leadership marks and a strong ethical core. Their records were intertwined. They had fought beside one another for years. Mirror and contrast, Thalen noted. Aggression and conscience. Let's observe both, Vorik gave a dismissive wave. It won't matter. Once their next war begins, there won't be enough left to study. Thalen turned, eyes sharp. You think they'll self-destruct? I think they'll try to take others with them when they do. Sether's voice dropped, almost reverent. And what if they succeed? Silence lingered in the dome, save for the hum of monitors and the soft tick of recorded gunfire. The three Elorians stood in a triangle scientist-soldier, scribe watching a world spiral into its own creation. Thalen lowered his voice. If we do nothing, we witness history. If we act, we become part of it. Vorik snorted. Don't mistake curiosity for responsibility. They are not our kind. They do not think like we do. Thalen didn't respond. Instead, he keyed in a final command. Begin deep behavioral tracking of Reece Morrow and Leo Vargas. The system responded instantly. Their movements, speech, and decisions would now be cataloged and streamed in real time. You're investing hope, Vorik said. Hope is inefficient. Hope, Thalen replied without looking, is what comes after understanding. And as the holoscreen zoomed into a bleak, smoke-laced Battlefield 2 figures crouched behind charred metal, rifles drawn, eyes scanning. Shadows, the Elorians, began to watch, not as gods, not yet as saviors, but as witnesses to the war that would define whether humanity belonged among the stars or buried themselves beneath the weight of their own rage. The dust tasted like rust and fire. Reece Morrow crouched low behind the broken shell of a troop carrier, its wheels half submerged in the mud of a former city square. Overhead, gray clouds pressed down as if the sky itself disapproved of the war below. A high-pitched whine snapped through the air. Without thinking, Reece yanked Sergeant Leo Vargas down beside him just as a pulse round tore a molten path through the air they'd been occupying seconds before. It slammed into a concrete wall and sent shrapnel singing in all directions. You're welcome, Reece muttered. Vargas shook dust from his face and spat. You've got a sixth sense for incoming fire, Captain. Starting to think you're not entirely human. Reece didn't laugh. He rarely did anymore. He peeked over the edge, eyes scanning through the scope of his rifle. 3 hostiles were flanking from the east, fast and disciplined, not insurgents. These were trained. They're pushing us toward the plaza, he said. They want us boxed in for air support. Vargas's brow tightened. You think Command knew this was a trap? I think Command doesn't care either way, Reece adjusted the grip on his rifle. This op was about the package, not the team. In his chest pouch sat a metal canister no bigger than a thermos, recovered from a data lab buried beneath a civilian hospital. No one had explained what was inside, just that it wasn't supposed to exist. The briefing had been sterile, clinical. The retrieval had not. Reece remembered the flickering hallway lights, the silence interrupted by short, sharp screams. The man in the lab coat who'd begged them not to take it. He hadn't resisted violently, but Vargas had still dragged him out while Reece secured the item. The man hadn't made it to the evac point. Vargas tapped his shoulder. 10 minutes. Extraction zone, Bravo. Assuming we don't get ventilated first. Reece nodded. Move on my signal. They sprinted. Smoke and gunfire ate up the space between cover points. Bullets cracked past them, chewing through walls. A drone arced overhead, scanning. Reece dropped to one knee, aimed, and fired. The drone blinked once, then fell in a spiral of metal and flame. They reached the edge of the plaza. Reece checked the skyline. No snipers, no motion. That felt wrong. Too quiet, he muttered. Vargas unslung a scanner. No infrared, no M signatures. Its a blast shattered the ground behind them. Reece was hurled forward, landing hard on a broken street sign. His ears rang, but he forced his vision to steady. Through the haze, he saw Vargas dragging himself behind a collapsed bench, bleeding from his arm. 3 enemy soldiers advanced from the alley, silent and methodical. Their armor was mismatched but reinforced, bearing no insignia. Mercs Reece raised his rifle, steadied his breath, and fired 3 times in quick succession. 2 targets fell. The third ducked and returned fire. Vargas crawled to cover, drew his sidearm, and popped off a shot that clipped the last merc in the throat. He fell soundlessly. Silence returned, stretched thin. They sat there for a moment, breathing in tandem. "You all right?" Reece asked. "Ask me in an hour," Vargas replied. Reece looked at him. Blood stained the younger man's sleeve, but his grip was steady. Leo Vargas was a paradox, a fighter who still believed there might be a better world waiting. He wasn't naive, he'd seen his share of horror, but something in him refused to break. "Why do you keep signing up for this?" Reece asked. Not entirely joking, Vargas blinked. "Same reason you do. 'Cause if the wrong people do this job, worse things happen." Reece didn't answer. He checked the canister again. Still sealed. Still humming faintly, like a distant wasp behind a wall. Whatever it was, it hadn't been meant for war zones, but that's where it had ended up. That's where everything ended up. They limped toward the extraction point. Reece kept his eyes moving, half expecting another ambush, but nothing came. No gunfire, no resistance. Just the steady drone of distant engines and the metallic whisper of 1,000 ghosts in empty buildings. They reached the evac zone. Just as the VTOL descended in a wash of grit and pressure, 2 crewmen waved them in. Reece climbed aboard first, then turned to pull Vargas up. As the hatch sealed, he slumped into the seat opposite the sergeant. "Any idea what we just risked our asses for?" Vargas asked, nodding at the canister. "No," Reece said. "But the brass wants it bad enough to send a team into a hot zone for it. That tells me it's either dangerous or very profitable." Vargas stared at the object for a long time. "You ever wonder how many lines we've crossed in the name of mission parameters?" "Every damn day." The VTOL shook as it lifted off, banking east toward the outpost. Reece leaned back and closed his eyes. He'd been in combat. So long that silence unnerved him more than bullets did. But now, even the silence felt wrong, like something vast and unseen had just taken notice of them, far above Earth's orbit. 3 Ilorian minds watched and recorded. They tracked Reece's calm efficiency, Vargas's protective instincts, the silent choices between kill or spare, endure or escape. They analyzed not only their actions, but the emotions behind them. And though the soldiers could not sense it, the alien gaze pressed closer, as if trying to read the shape of the human soul through the cracks in a war-torn face. In the distance, the sun dipped low, spilling blood-colored light over a world at war, and the watchers wondered whether it was the beginning of humanity's end, or just the prelude to something far more dangerous. The war footage played in silence, but Thalen didn't need sound to feel the pulse of violence. Frame by frame, he studied Captain Morrow's movements. The calculated footwork, the preemptive cover shifts, the microsecond timing of each shot. Precision born not of programming, but experience and something darker. Instinct weaponized. Emotion drives their choices. He said aloud, though the observation deck was empty, except for Vorik, who stood like a statue behind him. Emotion pollutes them, Vorik corrected. They could end conflict with logic, but they'd rather bleed for principle. Thalen rewound the moment when Morrow shielded Vargas from an explosion. It wasn't strategic. The blast radius wasn't fatal, and yet he acted on reflex. Protective impulse against odds that didn't warrant the risk. Fascinating, Thalen murmured. There's loyalty here. Purpose beyond survival. Foolishness, Vorik said flatly. He degrades his own value to preserve another. That's not evolution. That's a flaw. Behind them, Sether arrived with quiet steps, hands clasped at his back. There's something in the neural data, he said. Our deep surveillance thread captured a spike in cortical activity from Morrow shortly after the retrieval mission. An unusual pattern, high synaptic density across aggression and control centers. Trauma reaction? Blan asked. No. The pattern isn't reactive. It's adaptive. Vorik narrowed his eyes. Explain. Sether summoned a hologram of the canister Reece had recovered. The containment shell glowed with faint energy. This is more than stolen biotech. It's part of a larger human initiative. Neural integration protocols. Experiments in synthetic combat augmentation. But unlike their earlier failures, this one interfaces directly with identity centers. In the brain, Thalen's mind raced. They're trying to create self-learning soldiers. Not drones, not slaves. Warriors who adapt faster than any enemy. Exactly, Sether confirmed. And Reece Morrow may already be undergoing early-stage synchronization. Vorik's jaw tightened. Then he's not just dangerous. He's unstable. Thalen turned back to the screen. Morrow, seen now in post-mission debrief, sat still under dim lights, his eyes hollow but watchful. There was a coiled tension in his shoulders, like a man aware that the beast inside him was growing and wasn't entirely unwelcome. This changes the calculus, Thalen said. We're no longer studying instinct. We're studying evolution. In motion. Meanwhile, halfway across the Earth, Leo Vargas stood outside the barracks, staring up at a polluted sky that held no stars. His arm was still in a sling. The medics having patched him up with polymer skin and numbing agents, but the pain still throbbed underneath. Behind him, the laughter and shouting of other soldiers spilled from the rec room. For now, the base was safe, but Leo couldn't relax. Something had shifted during that mission. Reece had changed. He remembered how his captain moved through gunfire as if gravity had slackened, how his reflexes seemed anticipatory and human, and the way he'd looked. At the canister, not with suspicion, but with understanding, as if it spoke a language Leo couldn't hear. You're brooding again, Reece said, emerging from the shadows. Leo didn't flinch, just thinking. Something about this war feels different. Reece leaned against the railing beside him. Arms crossed, he looked healthy more than that, actually. Energized, alert in a way that felt unnatural. They're giving us a new target, he said. An underground facility outside Volgrad. Unofficial, no flags, just a lot of money and some very secret machines. Leo frowned. You already accepted the mission. I was ordered to accept it. That doesn't mean you had to agree. Reece looked at him for a long time. You think I've lost the right to question orders? Leo shook his head slowly. I think you've stopped needing to. Silence stretched between them. Then Reece exhaled. There's a reason I'm still alive. Leo, a reason I've lasted this long while others didn't. It's not luck, and it's not training. Something's happening to me. I can feel it. Leo's throat tightened. You should tell command. Get pulled from the field until they know what that canister did to you. Reece turned his gaze toward the distant lights of the outpost perimeter. You think they don't already know? Vargas said nothing. He understood now. Reece hadn't just been exposed to the tech, he was the test subject. Willing or not, they want to see what it makes me into, Reece continued. And I want to know too. That's not who you are, Leo said quietly. I'm not sure that matters anymore. The next morning, the mission brief was delivered. Via encrypted tablet. Target parameters. Destroy all research within the Volgrad compound. No survivors, no retrieval. Full purge. Leo scanned the orders twice. No mention of what was inside. No context. Just names of operatives, maps of tunnels, and timestamps. Looks clean, Reece said. It never is. Back on the Elorian observation. Deck Thalon zoomed in on the data burst from command. He had intercepted the mission plan before even Morrow had read it. He fed it through prediction algorithms. Probabilities bloomed across his screen-kill ratios. Exposure rates, collateral estimations, the numbers were catastrophic. They're sending him into a death trap, Thalon said. Vorik remains still, and he will survive it. That's what they're testing. Sether moved beside Thalon, voice quiet. If they succeed in weaponizing neural evolution, the rest of the galaxy must prepare. No treaty, no technology will restrain them. Thalon stared at the tiny figure of Reece Morrow displayed on his screen, preparing for war yet again. And he realized, for the first time, that they weren't observing a species at war with itself. They were watching a metamorphosis, and the final shape had yet to be revealed. The Volgrad facility was a tomb carved from stone and silence, hidden beneath frozen soil and decades of deniable funding. Inside, metal corridors wept with condensation. Lights flickered with the fatigue of secrecy. Whatever had been built here had never been meant to endure scrutiny-only function. Reece Morrow stood at the entrance of the lower sector. Breath slow, rifle at his side. The last resistance team had been eliminated without ceremony. No shouting, no mess. Just 3 precise shots through smoke-drenched halls. Vargas stood behind him, eyes narrowed, pulse rifle trembling ever so slightly. This place feels wrong, Leo said. Not just dangerous, contaminated. Reece didn't answer. He felt it too, a presence beyond machinery. It vibrated beneath his skin, not with fear, but hunger. He hadn't slept since arriving, yet his body remained sharp, alert, constantly tuned to something just beyond the veil of hearing. His thoughts moved faster now, connections forming before input arrived. The lines between cause and consequence had thinned. Ahead, heavy blast doors hissed open. They moved forward as one dot inside. A single chamber stretched outward, circular and cold. In the center stood a column of machinery, draped in cables like a mechanical cocoon. Its core pulsed with the same faint rhythm as the canister from before only. Louder, deeper, as if it recognized him. "Don't touch it," Leo said, but Reece had already taken a step. His hand hovered above the main interface, a translucent panel that shimmered with reactive light. He could feel it beckoning no sound, no words, just gravity. It was not technology built for control. It was built for communion. "Command wants it gone," Reece said. "Total incineration. Evidence scrubbed." "Then let's finish the job," Leo replied, raising his rifle, "before it finishes us." But Reece didn't move. The hum grew louder in his skull. Not painful, but complete. In the rising pulse, he felt memory, purpose, design. He understood now why they'd chosen him, why they hadn't stopped him. He wasn't here to destroy the prototype. He was the prototype. "This isn't an experiment," he said softly. "It's a threshold." Leo stepped beside him, lowering the rifle slightly. "Reece, you're not making sense." "I've been making perfect sense for weeks. Every shot I've taken, every call I've made, it was all leading here. And you feel it too, don't you?" Leo stared at him, and for the first time, didn't see the man who'd pulled him from a collapsed outpost 3 years ago. He saw a being becoming something else, sharper, colder, not void of humanity, but evolving beyond its limitations. "This isn't what we signed up for," Leo said. "No," Reece agreed. "But it's what we've been forged into." Alarms? Flared suddenly motion detected on the upper levels. Automated turrets engaged, cutting down incoming squads. A rival faction, late to the harvest. Fire bloomed through ventilation shafts. Leo's instincts kicked in. "We've got incoming. We hold or we run." Reece didn't flinch. "We hold." He turned, movements unnervingly smooth, and took position by the door. With surgical calm, he fired 2 rounds before the enemy breached the threshold. The first fell mid-sprint. The second never made it into view. Vargas laid down, suppressing fire, teeth clenched, heart pounding. His captain wasn't giving orders anymore. He was predicting the enemy's moves before they happened. There was no hesitation, no second guessing. Reece wasn't thinking faster. He wasn't thinking at all. He was knowing. More targets surged forward. Reece moved like flowing steel, every shot an execution. Blood misted the air. Screams echoed and vanished. He advanced, not just defending, but dominating. Leo tried to keep up, but for every 2 enemies he dropped, Reece felled 5. It wasn't battle. It was revelation. By the time silence returned, their boots stood in a puddle of bodies and shattered drones. The air stank of ozone and scorched circuitry. Leo lowered his weapon slowly. That wasn't war. That was annihilation. Reece's face remained unreadable. "You saw what I am now. I saw what you're becoming." Reece turned toward the core. It pulsed brighter now, as if fed by the blood outside. He placed his hand against the interface. The system responded with light and heat. No codes, no commands. Just a surge of recognition. "I can end this." Reece said, "Not just the mission, the pattern. I see the web now where it leads. Who pulls it? They don't want peace. They want escalation. Perpetual conflict, feeding the next version of me. And you're going to stop them by becoming the very thing they designed." Reece looked at Leo, the soldier, the friend, the conscience. "No, I'm going to stop them by choosing." He pressed his palm flat against the core. The system reacted violently. Conduits lit. Data flowed backward into the feed lines, melting partitions. The process was self-consuming. Would erase not only the data, but the architecture. A total burn. Leo's eyes widened. "You'll die." Reece nodded once. "Maybe, but I'll stop the next war before it starts." Leo stepped forward. "I should stay." "No," Reece said. "You carried the memory. You remind them what we lost, what we almost became." Reluctantly, Leo turned and ran, the base already groaning under the strain of energy feedback. Alarms screamed in every direction. As the final door sealed behind him, he saw Reece one last time, bathed in light. Steady as stone, unflinching. From orbit, Thalen watched the data vanish in cascading waves. The Elorian systems confirmed. Human subject Morrow initiated a full core purge. No external command, no incentive, just decision. Vorik stood at his side, silent for once. Sether leaned forward, eyes reflecting the dying feed. He chose sacrifice. That wasn't programming. Thalen exhaled slowly. No, that was humanity. In its most dangerous form. The screen went black, but in the silence that followed, no one turned away. Because somewhere beneath that ruined facility, something had changed. Not a soldier, not a machine. A moment, and that moment would ripple outward into stars, into stories. Into the cautionary tales whispered across galaxies. Humanity had been watched. Now, they would be remembered.